Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village near the forest. The little girl wore a red riding cloak, so everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood asked her mother if she could go visit her grandmother.
"That's a good idea,"
her mother said, so they packed a nice basket for Little Red Riding Hood to take to her grandmother.
"Remember, go straight to Grandma's house,"
her mother cautioned.
"Don't dawdle along the way, and please don't talk to strangers. The woods are dangerous." "Don't worry, Mommy,"
said Little Red Riding Hood.
"I'll be careful."
But when Little Red Riding Hood noticed some lovely flowers in the woods, she forgot her promise to her mother. Little Red Riding Hood was enjoying the warm summer day so much that she didn't notice a dark shadow approaching out of the forest. Suddenly, the wolf appeared beside her.
"What's that you're doing out here, little girl?"
the wolf asked in a voice as friendly as he could muster.
"I'm on my way to see my grandma,"
Little Red Riding Hood replied. Then she realized how late it was and quickly excused herself. The wolf, in the meantime, took a shortcut. The wolf arrived at Grandma's house and knocked lightly at the door.
"Oh, thank goodness, dear. Come in,"
said Grandma, thinking that the knock was her granddaughter. The wolf let himself in. Poor Granny did not have the time to say another word before the wolf gobbled her up, and then poked through Grandma's wardrobe to find a nightgown that he liked. A few minutes later, Red Riding Hood knocked on the door. The wolf jumped into bed and pulled the covers over his nose.
"Who is it?"
he called in a crackly voice.
"It's me, Little Red Riding Hood."
"Oh, how lovely. Do come in, my dear,"
croaked the wolf. When Little Red Riding Hood entered the little cottage, she could scarcely recognize her grandmother.
"Grandmother, your voice sounds so odd. Is something the matter?"
she asked.
"Oh, I just have a touch of the cold,"
squeaked the wolf.
"But grandmother, what big ears you have,"
said Little Red Riding Hood as she edged closer to the bed.
"The better to hear you with, my dear,"
replied the wolf.
"But grandmother, what big eyes you have,"
said Little Red Riding Hood.
"The better to see you with, my dear,"
replied the wolf.
"But grandmother, what big teeth you have,"
said Little Red Riding Hood, her voice quivering slightly.
"The better to eat you with, my dear,"
roared the wolf, and he leapt out of bed and began to chase the little girl. She ran across the room and through the door, shouting,
"Help! Help! Wolf!"
as loudly as she could. A woodsman was chopping logs, heard her cry, and ran toward the cottage as fast as he could. He grabbed the wolf and made him spit out poor grandmother, still in one piece.
"Oh, Grandma, I was so scared,"
sobbed Little Red Riding Hood.
"I'll never speak to strangers or dawdle in the forest again."
There, child. You've learned an important lesson. Thank goodness you shouted loud enough for this kind woodsman to hear you."
The woodsman knocked out the wolf where he wouldn't bother people any longer. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother had a nice lunch and a long chat.